Hello and welcome to another edition of the Talking Basketball podcast. I am Mark.
I am Paul. Hello.
Hello, hello. And
it's a sad day, Mark. It's a sad episode because here at the podcast we just take a short moment to remember a Portsmouth legend from the 80s in Portsmouth, and that was the legend known as Danny Palmer.
Yes. Ex-Crystal Palace coach as well, I believe.
Yeah, he was with Crystal Palace. And I think definitely at Crystal Palace and Portsmouth, that's where his coaching vision or genius vision really came into fruition.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's sad as well because I couldn't help think that we've done a few of these now, and it's all kind of happened quite recently. Like the last one we did was Mike Spade, who was part of that team. And you know, it just makes you think that, you know, we're all mortal, and those players in the 80s, well, yeah, they're all going to be in their 60s now, aren't they?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of stories, and look, we're based in Portsmouth, so we always gravitate with players from Portsmouth. But obviously, Danny would have had impact at Crystal Palace, and a lot of people have those memories there of him as well. And like all of these players, like when we spoke with Colin Irish and Steve, for example, they talk about all the teams as well that they went to with Worthing, etc., etc. And we want to share those stories. We want to keep those things alive because it's, you know, the best nod we can do to them is remembering them. And
so for the people on YouTube, Mark, you're talking about the Crystal Palace side.
Yes.
That's the Crystal Palace side there.
Yep.
And this is going to be really difficult, but where are we? Right here.
Yep.
That's
Danny
Palmer.
At the very top back, yeah.
So there you go. And you know, it's, you know, one of the things when he was at Crystal Palace. So this is back in 1983. You all like this? The Crystal Palace. They were known as the Supersonics, and the team featured some of the greatest name in the British game over the years. Some of the names, Mark, and that's this photo that I just showed you. Some of the greats that I can see here are Paul Stimpson, Joe White, Mick Bett, Joel Moore, Michael Howes, and legend Dan Lloyd. Look, I'm going to zoom right into that and show you this again. Number 50, number 15 there as well.
Oh yeah, there he is.
Dan Lloyd.
Shout out to Dan. We did do an episode with him. Go check it out.
There you go. That's probably a better one. Dan Lloyd and Danny Palmer there.
Yeah.
And
big guy. Was he 6'10", something like that? 7 foot?
Danny Palmer?
Yeah.
Danny Palmer was, I want to say like 6'11".
Yeah, big.
He's a big guy. I've got a great picture I'm going to show you in a minute. But on the coaching side at the Crystal Palace, you've also got Danny Palmer, Jimmy Rogers, and Mark Dunning. So it was a squad. It was a squad that he had there.
Yep.
And just going through, I made a couple of notes because, excuse me, some of the things that I found on him were really, really great. So he was from Detroit, and we was working in Detroit. That's the thing with these guys. It's why we're trying to get them on, because you can't just Google these people and find information out. You have to ask people, and it's stories that you hear through other people and stuff like that. But
it's kind of is it true scenario, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was from Detroit, or he was working in Detroit.
Yeah.
In the 70s, and he came over and was joined Crystal Palace and led the team to win a national championship in 1982. and he caused a sensation in the European Cup the following season, and because they knocked out a French team, Cologne, and then Real Madrid. Sorry, this is why I put my glasses on. It's still difficult.
The thing is, all of these players and those parts of history, it's very easy for us now to look in this. I'd kind of say it's in the 90s. There's actually a stop somewhere. Let's just say we talk NBA for a second. There's actually a timeline where they say from here, that's where the official stats started. But from this point is where you get more of the stats and more of the information. And kind of before that time frame,
Nothing out there.
there is nothing out there. So the timelines that we're talking about with people, just so you understand, you're talking at the same sort of eras where people are playing like Wilt and that kind of era. This is not just in like the 2000s or 2010s or even late 90s. We're talking early 80s.
Magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magic days, yeah. Well, here you go. Here's Danny Palmer. And anyone who can see that should recognize the person he's with. He's standing next to Alan Ball, Portsmouth football legend, Alan Ball.
I mean, Alan wasn't a tall chap.
But they're inside. That's at Fratton Park.
Yeah, that is a very cool picture. He's massive.
That's the you know what? That's the picture that Danny Palmer is remembered. Lots of people remember him on that picture. So yeah, like it was. I want to get the date exactly right, but he was with Crystal Palace for a couple of years, and that's it. So in 1984, that's when he came to a revamped Portsmouth basketball team. And I think it was great because I read through this again. I was like, man, this is brilliant. And the chairman of Portsmouth Football Club, John Deacon, he actually tried to buy the Eastleigh-based Solent Stars, and he failed in that bid, and he ended up buying the Telford Turbos instead, which then turned into Portsmouth. And it was midway through the 84-85 season, and he got a handful of players, which obviously includes players we've had on the podcast, like Steve Nelson.
Yeah.
And I think they even stayed. I'm sure Steve said this. He said after they became Portsmouth, they actually still played some of their games in Telford. I'm sure he said that.
It was something like that for that first little bit, wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
Because it was a venue, so they had somewhere to go.
So there was this great. So after Danny Palmer came in and as coach, and their first game was against the Solent Stars in Solent. And I thought that was great because, John Deacon went to buy Solent. They said no. He then bought Telford, turned them into Portsmouth. They get Danny Palmer, bam. Suddenly they're playing Solent in Solent. Well, at Fleming Park was the game. And Portsmouth won the game.
And
106-91 they won.
Ooh, man, that's quite a high scoring game for back then as well. That's quite a high scoring game.
Yeah, and it wasn't for. I think the story is there was a burst mains pipe at Mountbatten Centre, and that delayed the Portsmouth Basketball Club playing on their own court there. But during that 84-85 season, they would start playing their games at Mountbatten Centre. And then so Danny Palmer ends up signing a 2-year contract, and I think this is where his kind of one of his geniuses come in, because the side that he then goes on to be part of. Let me read some of these names for you. I've got a lot of notes here. A lot of notes.
But all of those teams, you know, it's worth pointing out as well that this, I want to say it's not the inception stage of basketball in the UK, because basketball had been played there, you know, here for quite a while. But it wasn't until 1987 that what was known as the BBL, which is now the SLB at the moment, that whole league, which is on the top tier national league effectively, that's where the records sort of were from, 1987. Prior to that, there was plenty of teams, like Newcastle was still Sunderland back then. There's plenty of teams around. There's plenty of basketball going on, but the records are just, you can't find it. And I believe it's up near Manchester or somewhere. And Dan Routledge mentioned it in his interview, that there are those out there who are trying to gather all this bit of information and capture that history of British basketball.
It's so difficult.
It is, like you say, it's trying to find the actual people. So if you do know, like, you know, if someone's listening to this now and you know someone,
score sheets. How are you going to get score sheets from 40 years ago?
like, if you know anyone who's there, get in contact. We'd love to hear those stories.
These are some of the players that he was working with.
Yeah.
So obviously we said Steve Nelson was one of them, but Joe White, Joe Moore, Dan Lloyd, that was with him. You know, these are some Crystal Palace players that he's brought down. Danny Williams, Mike Spade, obviously, Alan Cunningham, Colin Irish.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that I haven't got stats for Portsmouth before '86. But what I would say probably benefited Danny Palmer is that John Deacon gave him a big budget, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
He kind of went, go and win the league. And one of the things you got to hand it to Danny Palmer is he came to Portsmouth and they were, let me see where they were. When he came to Portsmouth, they were, so he came to Portsmouth and in that season, they finished second from bottom.
Yep.
In his first full season in charge, they then finished third.
Okay.
Manchester United won the league.
Well,
the Kingston Kings is what they were called then. And Portsmouth FC Basketball Club finished third. But they only lost 3 games all season. Kingston lost 4 games. Manchester United lost 3 games. So, you know, they were in the mix. They lost out on the league by 6 points. Second place by 4 points.
They're mixing. They're in the mix. They're competitive. It wasn't a destination that someone thought, ugh, they're not doing anything there.
So yeah, I mean, some of the funny things I was trying to find like a nice tone, but there was some of the this is something that I read. Some of the Portsmouth games, in his first season, he was absent on the bench.
Oh, really?
And people were like, "Where's Danny Palmer?" And he was commentating on Channel 4 TV at the same time. And he was like, "Look, I'm already committed." Like, I imagine that would have been a nice paid gig as well.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, that is tricky, isn't it? If you've already said I'm doing that and then double booked.
Yeah. So actually, look, I got it here. So Portsmouth played a game in Havant at one point in front of 300 people. I mean, look, we're getting more at Portsmouth Force, you know, now in National League Div 3 than they were in '84.
But then you got to think about the size of population at this time compared to now. I got 208,000 just in this local city. Only island city in the UK, but there's 208,000 roughly here.
But Mark, Danny Palmer's, who was his first signing? What a signing this is. His first signing in the 85-86 season. Joel Moore from Brixton. He's not mucking around, is he?
No, you're not mucking around if you're going straight after Brixton. No. If you're doing that and you're bringing those calibers,
he's signing Alan Cunningham as well. Probably, arguably the greatest player ever to have played in the English game.
Yes, yeah. Like, I mean, the first time the SLB or BBL rather did that Hall of Fame first person in there is Alan Cunningham.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And look, we gotta talk about it because it's part of Danny Palmer's history, and it's part of Portsmouth FC Basketball Club's history. That I don't know what happened, but something's happened, and he's left the club, and then Dan Lloyd has taken over as player coach.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because Danny Palmer was part of that huge squad of, bringing that squad together. And the season after he left, Portsmouth FC Basketball Club went on to do the double.
Yeah.
They won the BBL 2 years in a row.
The foundations were there, weren't they?
And that's the one thing that I would say is why I think, especially from us being from Portsmouth, and we're trying to highlight, these kind of people, is, he, like exactly what you said, he was part of the foundations that got Portsmouth to being, the double BBL champions that they were.
Yeah.
There was another little story I heard of him. I mean, this is nuts. He went on to play in Germany, and he was in a car accident.
Okay.
Where something happened and he stopped, and another car went into him. And he went to hospital, and he was there for ages, and they let him go, and they said, "You're fine." And he got home, and he was just like, "I'm not feeling right. Something's not right." And he went back to hospital, and they said, you're bleeding something from your spleen. And if you went home, like if you stayed at home and went to bed, like you wouldn't have been waking up. So
wow.
Yeah, he literally close to dying. And that was, I want to say that was in 93. I remember. I think that was in 93. And it was one of those articles, and you kind of can appreciate where he's coming from, where he was like, it gives you another perspective on life there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
I stayed asleep. And so
damn. Yeah, that's what I think about, isn't it? Especially if he's like, I just feeling a bit rough, not feeling my best. Just go get it checked out again.
I try to find the article for you. Like, although he attended a hospital after the accident, he collapsed in his hotel in the early hours the following morning. His partner in the sports promotion company took him back to the hospital, where it was discovered his spleen had ruptured and over 3 pints of blood has seeped into his stomach. He told me I could have bled to death in my sleep. I tell you, something like that stops you worrying too much about the little things in life.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
There's a great one. He was coaching at this time. I think he was coaching Stuttgart. And the chairman of the Stuttgart was like, I am tying him to the bench. He's being tied to a chair, and he's not allowed to stand up and walk around. He'll be there, but he's not allowed to run around and walk around.
Oh, good. No, I like that.
I did have another picture of him. I don't know if it's going to be great.
Good old Stuttgart.
No, it's not great. But there's if anyone's on Facebook, you've got I think it's called English Basketball, and there's a few where or BBL Legends and stuff like that, and you get some great pictures. But what I love about all that is some of the comments where people say stories about how players influenced them and things like that. And it's I think Danny Palmer ended coaching in the UK, and he went over and went to Florida, the sunny state, the Sunshine State, and he was coaching big men. That was his. He was just right. My job. I'm just going to coach big men and how to play.
Yeah, well, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
And I said this to you, but I'll share it with our listeners. I said this to you today. I was really kicking myself because I actually found him on LinkedIn because I really wanted to get Danny Palmer and Dan Lloyd, the coaching, like the backbone of everything to do with Portsmouth FC Basketball Club, and I actually found him on a LinkedIn.
Yep.
I didn't think it was him, and again, I saw something today, and I was like, man, I actually found you 18 months ago. I should have reached out and said, don't suppose you're Danny Palmer from the Portsmouth FC Basketball days, and we might have had a 2-3 hour chat with him, but I was really kicking myself. But again, that's the whole point about this, isn't it? Those guys get to speak. I felt a little bit like, oh man, that was a shame. But yeah, I bet he's got some great story. He would have had some great stories about the time.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Chats with John Deacon, going in that room, convincing Alan Cunningham to re-sign a 2-year deal. You know, how did he feel leaving the club, or why did he leave the club? All that we don't know. As conjecture, I don't know what it. I'm not going to comment on conjecture, but on this one anyway. So, look, Mark, let's have a round of applause for.
We will indeed have a round of applause for the big man.
And you know, it's just another sad time where we say goodbye to one of those people who we all look up to.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those who are current players, these sort of this generation and all the generations that have come before, they are kids look up to you as a professional player. So it should always be a good impetus for you, because in the same way that we're looking up to Danny and Colin and all the greats that were in our youth and generation, ones now, it's like, I won't say you can immortalize yourself, but
well, look, you'll have an impact on someone's life when you like you said with our kids and the Surrey 89ers, like they were like starstruck.
Exactly.
And people in Portsmouth, we had that on our doorstep. Yep. And we were the best in the UK for 2 years. 2 glorious years.
2 gloriously is indeed.
There you go. Yes. Rest in peace, Danny Palmer.
Rest in peace indeed, sir. And so ends another edition of Talking Basketball Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Go and check out our other episodes if you haven't listened to them before. And if you are an ex-player, or you're someone involved in all the previous leagues, we would love to hear of you and share your story. So come and talk to us. I've been Mark.
I've been Paul, and we've been talking about the legend, Danny Palmer.